Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ja, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Audible, Amazon Music, CastBox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have two wonderful guests for you today. It's so much fun talking to both of these authors. Deeba Zargarpur is here to celebrate Farrah Noorzad and the Ring of Faith. And later in the show, David Flores will be here to celebrate The Boy Who Cried Falta. Hey, parents and educators, are you looking for a fun way to help kids understand their feelings? Check out Felipe the Feeling Frog from the Caring Critter series, written by Zeba McGibbon. In this engaging book, Felipe explores his neighborhood and learns that there are no bad feelings, just easy and hard ones that need the right strategies for self-regulation. Perfect for kids ages 4 to 7, Felipe the Feeling Frog teaches essential emotional regulation skills through captivating and relatable stories, as well as adorable illustrations by Denise Walker. Written by a dedicated kindergarten teacher, Felipe the Feeling Frog shows children that all feelings are okay, but it's how we manage them that matters. Felipe and his friends model different emotions and strategies, making it easy for kids to learn and apply these skills. Don't miss this valuable resource for social and emotional learning. And stay tuned for more from the Caring Critters series, including the upcoming Trixie the Thoughtful Turtle. Grab your copy of Felipe the Feeling Frog today to help your child navigate their emotions with a smile. Hey, my friends, we are really excited. Reading with Your Kids podcast is returning to the Chicago Toy and Game Fair November 9th and 10th at the Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois. Let your imagination come to life at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, the ultimate family play experience. Dive into hands-on fun with the hottest new toys and games, meet the inventors behind your favorite products, and even get a sneak peek at what will top holiday wish list this year. From interactive play zones to exciting competitions and exclusive giveaways, there's something for every member of the family at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair. And don't miss the Young Inventor Challenge, where kids showcase their creativity and innovation. Who knows, you just might meet the next big inventor. Join us at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois, November 9th and 10th. Whether you're a game enthusiast or just looking for a fun weekend with the family, the Chicago Toy and Game Fair has it all. And like I said, the Reading with Your Kids podcast will be there, and you may have a chance to be heard on the show. Get your tickets today and bring the magic of play to life. Visit shytag.com for details, and be sure to use the discount code READ, R-E-A-D, at checkout to save on tickets. Join us right now from right outside of New York City. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new middle grade novel. Is called Farrah Noorzad and the Ring of Fate. Please welcome to the show, Deeba Zargarpur. Deeba, welcome to Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us all about your new novel, please.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be talking about my debut middle grade. It's essentially about a 12-year-old girl who discovers her true jinn heritage. And if you don't know what a jinn is, you can think of them as supernatural magical beings. I like to think of them as people, but with powers, so better. But she discovers that she is a half jinn when a birthday wish gone wrong traps her father in a magical ring. sending her on an epic quest to free him. And along the way, she traverses around between the human realm and the magical jinn realm. She makes new friends, discovers brand new family that she didn't know existed, and uncovers a huge secret about her father and the life he hid from her. It's a big adventure story with bigger emotions, filled with action, magic, and self-discovery.
This idea of magical creatures kind of living amongst us, you find that in a number of different cultures around the world. I know in my own, my grandparents immigrated here to the States from Ireland, and they believed in fairies and leprechauns and all those kind of magical creatures.
Yes, I feel like it's embedded in a lot of our cultures. Growing up, my family, they immigrated from Afghanistan in the 80s. And we retained a lot of our culture. I feel like immigrants, when they come to the U.S., it goes one of two ways. You either hold on to your culture very tightly, or you completely assimilate. And my family was the former. And so we grew up with a lot of stories about supernatural beings. Jinn in our culture and also in our religion, they're seen as beings that are just as real as you and me, and that the belief that they exist and live among us in an unseen realm in a parallel dimension is very strong. So I would grow up listening to all these ghost stories about devious jinn who trick, kids who don't go to bed when they're supposed to at night and maybe sneak out or go places they're not supposed to go. It's very much in, the same tradition of, I feel like, classic fairy tales that we're familiar with, the Grimm brothers stories, that just, I grew up with and was always fascinated with the idea of, well, what if you stumbled upon a creature, and what if magic lingered right around the corner? What would that look like?
Yeah. So much fun. You mentioned the Grimm fairy tales and the stories that you grew up on. The original versions of a lot of those stories was pretty dark and scary.
Very scary. And a lot of the stories of jinn that I had when I was a kid, they were also very scary. There were usually ghost stories. Traditionally, when you hear about a jinn, they usually haunt in areas that are deserted or desolate, or in areas where people don't normally go. So when you think of like haunted houses or those ghost stories that we see in the media, it's a lot of that was, well, that's because it was a jinn and you don't go in those areas. But I always thought, well, they can't be that scary. Like, what if there was a world where they were just like us and had their own dreams and aspirations and their own schools? And how would a jinn kid operate? And would it be any different from me and you? And so the fantasy world that I built was more on kind of maybe that Disneyfication that sort of like the Grimm fairy tales kind of got, where it's lighter, funner, but also there is still that undertone of the original of it's beautiful, but danger can lurk in beautiful things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kids in this middle grade, they seem to really love spooky stories, kind of scary adventure stories.
Yes, and when I was a kid, I really loved scary stories. I was a fan of The Ring when I was young. When that came out, I loved all of those kind of traditional horror stories. I was a big horror reader. I read the Shivers series, Goosebumps. There were TV programs like Are You Afraid of the Dark? I feel like growing up as a kid in the 90s, there kind of was that resurgence of the scary fairy tale or the scary ghost story. And I think as a kid, I gravitated towards the scarier stories because in some way it helped me navigate some of the scary things that were going on in my life as a kid that I didn't understand. And it's kind of like distracting yourself from maybe difficult family situations with something else to occupy your mind. And I think it's a way for kids to kind of explore those feelings in a safe place.
Yeah. As you were creating this character in this story, did you have little Deeba in your mind? Were you writing for her?
Yeah, I think when I first came up with this story, it was the first story I ever came up with, and I was a teenager. I was about 17 or 18 years old. It was the first original story that I was playing with. But before that, as a young person, I often retreated into stories a lot and fiction, and kind of just wrote out different possibilities as a means of, I think, trying to explore things that were going on in my life. And so when I wrote this story, I think it was kind of like going back in time a little bit and uncovering some of the struggles that I had as a young person and didn't see reflected in literature at the time, and kind of work through that. When I was a kid, a lot of the stories that I liked and was drawn to, there was a recurring theme of children who didn't have parents. It was kind of like the orphan trope. A lot of the big properties back then, Lemony Snicket, Harry Potter, it was kind of in middle grade. It's kind of like the tragic backstory of the child where both children, where both parents are not alive anymore. And also in a lot of the Disney tales, it's kind of like the orphan that kind of then goes through the adventure. And I gravitated towards those stories because I also came from a non-traditional home. My parents had divorced when I was young. And I kind of related to the characters where they yearned for that parental connection, or they yearned for a sense of family that was lost. But I didn't really see books that featured children that had divorced parents. It was really one or the other. Either the parents were completely absent, or it was like a perfect family. And so I kind of felt like, not like one foot in neither, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so when I believe the first time I'd actually seen a character where there was one parent still in the picture and one parent missing was in the Percy Jackson series, where Percy Jackson's father is absent from his life. And I wanted to continue in that narrative and produce more work in that vein of what it means when you live in a single parent home as a kid and the unique struggles that you have. And, the reasons why parents leave or aren't together anymore. At that age, a kid doesn't really understand. I didn't really understand really why my parents just couldn't work it out. Like, why couldn't you stay together? And reading that in a fantasy space, in a safe world, kind of allows you to unpack those feelings and also distract from those big feelings or those big scary questions that maybe you don't want to ask. Mm-hmm. So then escaping and writing into this fantasy world where maybe there's like a magical solution or a magical reason why, like, oh, my dad couldn't stay with my mom not because he wanted to leave us, but because he was a magical jinn king and he couldn't be with us because there was an issue with the magical world and the non-magical world, and they couldn't be together. Mm. And then it kind of allows you to kind of explore the possibility that maybe I'm in this situation because I'm extraordinary in that way, where, you're in a single parent household, but it's because of this magical secret that then makes you extraordinary and can jumpstart you on an adventure of your life. Yeah. Is a very roundabout way in how I tackled writing the story, why it came to me, and why I decided to finish it and publish it so many years later. Because I think a lot of adults, sometimes you just need to face that 12-year-old you and kind of acknowledge that chapter and close it. Yeah. So that's what it was for me.
We love that books can be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And of course, I'm imagining that a 12-year-old Deeba seeing this character, from a family that is not together would be very comforting. But I really love the aspect of a book being a window into somebody else's life, somebody else's culture, somebody else's language. And I love that books can help us come closer together and help us realize that we are all part of one beautiful human family. Will somebody picking up this book get an idea of a better understanding of Afghan culture?
Yeah, so that was also important for me, was to write a character that looked like me, that was also relatable to a wide variety of people. I think the main character, Farrah, she has a multi-hyphenate, so she has a lot of identities. She has Afghan culture, but she's also an American girl. She was born and raised in the US, goes to school like everybody else, and also kind of has this magical heritage that maybe not everybody has, but is relatable. And I think in writing her story and writing her as a character, it was important for me to show the Afghan identity portrayed in a different way than what you would expect, and what you would normally see. When I was growing up, actually, it was encouraged to hide that I was Afghan because, I was a young child during 9/11, and it just wasn't a good period of time to say that you were from that part of the world or that country specifically. And it became very shameful. Even if I didn't feel shame about it, when you watch the news and you read the books and it's the war on terror and it's always something negative, as a child, you don't realize that you're internalizing that, and you almost internalize this sense of you don't want people to notice that about you, so you unknowingly make yourself invisible. And so it was important for me now as an adult, when I realized that was not okay, was to show kids that you can be from Afghanistan or have Afghan heritage and still be going through the same struggles. You can still feel like you want your dad's attention, and you still want to make your mom happy and reduce the stress on her plate by, being the best, getting the best grades, being that star child. And you can still feel that pressure of, you're growing apart from your best friends and, having tension with siblings and being relatable. Her Afghan identity is just one piece of the pie, but has so much more within her that I feel like would bring a lot of kids together. And that was the goal, really. It's where, kids learn about a new culture, but they also see themselves within that character. And I feel like that's really the best way to provide empathy for kids and to bring them together and see that we're really all just one.
Yeah, absolutely. We really encourage families to, of course, read with their young kids cut up on the couch and talking about the different picture books that they're reading. But we also know and celebrate the fact that there's lots of value and lots of benefit in continuing to read with our kids as they become independent readers, reading middle grade novels with them, reading YA titles with them, experiencing and consuming music together and whatnot. What kind of conversations do you think families can have if they choose to co-read your book together?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I think my book would be perfect for families who are non-traditional in the same way that Farrah's family is non-traditional, where maybe it's a single parent household, or it's a family going through divorce, or it's an unusual family situation where they need a safe space to unpack those big feelings. I often find that young people might be hesitant to talk about the things that bother them because it feels very personal. It feels very scary. But if you read something where a character is going through something similar, I think it provides a safe space for a child and parents to have that conversation indirectly where you're talking about a character. But I think you could really glean a lot from children in the ways that they relate, in the comments that they make. And I think it can be a pathway for a child to be comfortable and maybe express something that is really personal to them. It's definitely, books in general are always the opening for dialogue. And it doesn't even have to be about tough subject matter. It could also just be about the way that they see the world. Middle grade is amazing in the fact that it really tackles big subjects around morality, what we consider good, what we consider bad. And readers at that age are kind of understanding that the world is not really black and white. There's a big gray in between, and it's more of, why is a hero and why is a villain, and who is the hero of the story and who is the villain of the story. That's kind of like something that I was playing with in this series in general, where you always assume that perhaps, a villain is on the wrong side, but maybe a villain never operates as a villain. Every person is the hero of their own story, and maybe understanding how someone could go down a particular path, I think is a great way to have lots of discussions with children.
Yeah, I think that idea that you shared that things aren't black and white. I think for a lot of parents, they would really like things to be black and white. So because it's easier to teach your kids, this is good, that's bad. You shouldn't do this, you should do that. But of course, that's not the way the world is. And so, oftentimes we focus on, what can the kid get out of this by, through having a conversation with their parent. I firmly believe that we as parents grow a lot and that our kids teach us a lot. And having those kind of conversations around this book, could open up parents' eyes and to encourage them to have a different perspective or just consider a different perspective.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Do you plan on this becoming a series?
Yes. So I am currently working on the second book. So there is a continuation to the first. This could be read as a standalone, but then there is an epilogue that has continuation, and it's more into delving into the magical world where she uncovers more secrets that her father didn't tell her, and the real reason why she was kept a secret in the first place. It's, I would say, a little bit of a darker tone than the first book, because I delve in more into that morally gray of the idea when I was young, and when you see your parents, you see them as heroes, right? You see them as people that can do no wrong. They're the people that are meant to care for you, provide for you, protect you, love you, and choose you unconditionally. And so this next book really tests that assumption and what happens when a parent that's supposed to choose you doesn't, and the lengths a child will go to prove that they're good, to prove that they belong, and what happens when it doesn't happen. Like, what happens when, no matter what you do, if a parent doesn't want to be there for you, they will not. And then how does that affect, the way a child operates in the world, how they see themselves, their self-worth, their value. Those are themes that I was exploring more so in book 2. We touch upon them in the first book, but then this is more of a little bit heavier conversation in respects to the parental relationship, where she's now more in the father's world, mm-hmm. and it not being exactly what she thought it would be.
This sounds good. It sounds like you need to come back to celebrate that book when it's available.
I think so. It will be out next year in September, which
Well,
will come soon enough.
we're looking forward to that. In the meantime, how do you like writing for this audience? Is this something that you plan on spending a lot more time in this genre?
I really love writing middle grade. What I said before is you can really play with traditional assumptions of morality and what it means to be the hero of your own story. I think a lot of people might, or a lot of adults might write off middle grade or fiction for children as something light or that doesn't delve into heavier subject matter or that it's fluffy. But at this age, when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, you're really learning your own moral compass. You're really learning. It's that first step outside of your family, outside of your parents' beliefs, where you're learning to figure out who you are as a person. And I think that's a really interesting space to be in. You know, it's really exciting to me, honestly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Farrah Noorzad and the Ring of Fate, and also find out more about you.
Yeah, you can go to my website, www.deebazargarpur.com, where you can find out about Farrah Noorzad and the Ring of Fate and the upcoming sequels.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Farrah Noorzad and the Ring of Fate, the debut middle grade novel from our guest, Deeba Zargarpur. Deeba, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. I really love when I get to talk to friends here on the podcast. And our guest today is one of my new friends. We became friends at the Indie Author Summit out in Kansas City. It's a beautiful family, and I'm happy to have him on the show. He's the author of The Boy Who Cried Falta. Please welcome to the show, David Flores. Hey, David, how are you?
Doing great, Jed. Thank you for having me. Yes, it is awesome to catch up again after meeting a few weeks ago. And let's have fun today.
Yeah, there's so much I want to talk to you about, but why don't we just start by telling us The Boy Who Cried Falta, what this book is all about.
So I grew up playing soccer in El Salvador. That's where I'm a native of, and now I am a coach. I'm coaching so many hours now. But as I witness the game and the passion for the game that Latino kids have here in the U.S. and also in Latin America, it dawned on me that yes, a lot of kids fake it. A lot of kids overplay their injuries, and as a coach, I witnessed it, right? And that was my idea. My aha moment was when I was teaching pre-K at the time, and I was teaching fables, and we're talking about, the boy who cried wolf. And just recently, I had coached a game where the kiddo would just fall, right? And he would roll and scream, and you would think that he was dying, right? And it just like, oh my gosh, and it just clicked, and I had to write it. I had to write a soccer version of The Boy Who Cried Wolf.
Yeah. We're chatting about, this tradition of soccer players flopping. Somebody comes up and they breathe or they sneeze, and player will go down. It's almost comical to watch sometimes because some teams are so bad at it. It's just like ridiculous.
Yes. And I think in the past, players who faked and the referee would, it was obvious, they will get carded, they will have an immediate consequence to their faking fouls. But now that there is they introduce cameras and replays, they don't card them anymore. And so now you see it more and more happening in the game. So yeah, I mean it gets to the point where it's very comical, and they compare it to women's soccer, but the women don't do that, you
Right.
know. So they're always comparing it that women are tougher on the field because they don't fake any of that stuff. They don't go down so easily, and at times, it is the right call.
Yeah. Where does your passion for soccer or football come from? Were you just out of the womb? You just had a soccer ball, and
It's interesting because my family was more artistically inclined. We all watched soccer growing up. My mom loved soccer the most, more than my dad. My dad he grew up working since a very early age in El Salvador. And we every Saturday we'll watch the local team play, and we will watch Real Madrid play. That was the team that we followed. But it was, my brother was a musician. Since very young, he knew how to play multiple instruments. My sister was book smart, school, always studying. And somehow I was the kid that was always, mischievous and out in the streets and running around with friends playing soccer barefoot, right? That was the rule of the game. If one kid didn't have shoes to play with, then nobody could wear shoes. So everybody was barefoot playing the game. So I had a lot of freedom to run around the neighborhood. So that's where my passion for the game started. And moving to the US at a young age, at the age of 13, it was difficult. I did not know any English, and I did not have many friends. I had a few cousins. They invited me to play for a club team after school. And I'll be honest with you, that was my anchor to a healthy teenage years. Everything else was difficult. School was hard. Friendships were hard. My social life was hard because the language. But soccer gave me a group of friends, gave me a place to belong, and a place where I felt success in moments where in school I did not feel successful. So yeah, that carried on, and I wanted to keep playing. So I did well in high school because I wanted to play, and I wanted to keep playing. So I went to college and I kept playing college soccer, and now I coach. That's 70% of my life now is coaching.
Wow, what a journey. And what a journey to come here at 13, not being able to speak English, and now just a few years later, you're writing books.
Yes. I wanted to keep coaching, right, at the high school level, and that's what I wanted to do. And at the time, I did not have my certification. At the time, I graduated, no certification, but there was a shortage of bilingual teachers. And a local school, a very small school, 3A, in Palmer, Texas, they called me to come interview. And I was open and upfront with them. Hey, look, I already done a few interviews. I don't have my certification yet. I'm scheduled to take the test in the winter. Well, they encouraged me to come out and interview either way, and they offered me a position. They got a waiver for me, and I started teaching pre-K of all grade levels. And I loved it. I felt natural. I felt right at home. So I started reading books to the kids. We're talking about at least 5 books a day that I was reading to them. So, yeah, growing up, books were not a thing in our family. We were not a reading family, but getting into education changed it for me. Like I was like a little boy reading a story for the first time as I'm reading it to them. So I started falling in love with books, with children's books. Then I became a father, and that elevated my love for books even more. Now that my kids were, bookworms, they would crawl to the room whenever they could, and they would just pull books down from the shelf and start babbling, and that pushed me forward.
That's wonderful. I really love it. If you don't mind, I'd like to talk, you shared your story that you immigrated here from El Salvador. We hear a lot of talk about immigration these days, and this isn't a political show, but I'd like people to understand a little bit about what it's like, because I think the thing that a lot of people are missing in these great debates is we're talking about human beings. We're talking about our brothers and sisters who are coming here, in many cases, trying to escape extreme poverty or violence, or just looking for a place where they can eat. So if you could take just a little bit, a moment, if you choose to share a little bit about your journey here and what it was like when you came in, and let's just let us see what that was like for you.
Of course, yes. I oftentimes, I've been here for so long now. I'm 34 now, so I've been here most of my life. You tend to forget to talk about your past and what made you who you are. And yeah, my father migrated first, and so for a good chunk of my life, it was just my brother, my sister, myself, and my mom. Right. Also had a cousin living with us, that, they had it even worse than we did. So my mom took him in. So he's like another brother to us. But yeah, my father migrated after the earthquake, in El Salvador. And, there were some relief visas, that were given, to people in poverty. So, yeah, in El Salvador in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s, it was rough. No opportunities. People were making $1 a day, $2 a day. So it was difficult to make a living and to have a prosperous future, We are fortunate because we had a dad in the US that could send some money back. But at the time, my dad was working in Virginia, very, very close to, the metropolitan area. So it was even hard for him to pay the bills and still send money. So it was difficult. We went through seasons where all we had to eat every meal was just beans and rice. And sometimes we could afford eggs and maybe a little tomato stew and tortillas. That was a pretty long season of our life, the way that we were living. But, aside from that, the country was not safe. We lived in an area that faced a nice neighborhood that was not dangerous, but our address was an actual gang control neighborhood. And yeah, I mean, people would not come nearby. You could not go into another colonia, another neighborhood, because it could be controlled by another gang. So yeah, you had to be careful with what you did, what time you were out at night, what neighborhood you visited. So yeah, the immigration experience for us, I mean, it opened up the doors of opportunity. My brother was unable to come because he was already an adult. So he never had the opportunity to get a visa to come to the U.S. But we did, my sister and I, and together with my mom, we moved here. And I'll tell you that having the opportunities to have a great education here affords me the blessing of being where I am, right? We're able to publish books, like things that I would have never in a million years thought that I could publish a book and be a teacher of all things, because, I was that kid running around the neighborhood. But yes, we moved for a better life, and I think my parents made the right choice. And yeah, in the U.S., many people blame the parents that brought the minors, but at the same time, we hold them in great regard for making the decision. My dad has passed now. He passed away a few years ago, and I honor him, and I am thankful to him, and I love him for the decisions that he made for our family. We were able to get an education. We are able to have our families that have a great future. Both my wife and I graduated college. She was the first one to graduate college as well, same as me. My sister has little kids now too that are in a path to change the future of our generation, of our family line. Because now there are degrees, there are education. So now they're going to be a step ahead. They're not going to have to go through the struggles that we went through. Their struggles may be different, but we're going to be able to set them into a more prosperous future.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's important that we don't lose sight of the fact that when politicians are arguing, we need to remember that the people are people, and they're our brothers and sisters. So thank you. And I am really grateful that your father made that decision, because I think that you and your family are a blessing to this country. And it's obvious, you're serving kids as a teacher and a coach, and now you're sharing your imagination through these wonderful books that you're writing.
Yes. And, when I go do school visits, that's one of the feedbacks that is one of the most common ones that I get from administrators, is that they tell me, and I quote them, they need to hear from someone like you. They need to hear from someone like them. Mm-hmm. And funny enough, I visited this rural school, maybe 10% Hispanic kids, right? So they don't have a large community in that area. And I was reading my third book, Tita la Gallinita, and it's a play on the little red hen, right? But Tita does not find wheat; she finds corn. So instead of making bread, she makes tamales. And so I mentioned tamales, and the Hispanic kiddos lit up. I mean, they're like, oh, my mom makes those. She sells them. And I mean, that at that point, the kid that is seen as the quiet one, or the one that is oftentimes not seen by their peers, at that moment they are like, oh, I see you, mm-hmm. right? I hear you. I understand your community a little bit more. So that is my favorite thing, you know, when I go on and visit schools and I share my books, is like, you know what, let me highlight you for today, right? Let me bring a smile to you and tell you your community, your background, your food, what you eat is great. So it's been a blessing every time I go and I share with the Hispanic kiddos as well, you know, and I highlight them. It's been a blessing.
Yeah. And, you know, just as much as those kids need to see you, I think the other kids, the white kids, the black kids, the Asian kids, can really learn a lot from your story. Books are windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors, and those are three magical properties of books and reading. And it's a great way to help each other, to help us get to know each other and grow closer.
Yes, definitely. And, you know, one of the schools that I visited the last was in East St. Louis, which is mostly an African-American community. And man, I read the newest book, right? The Boy Who Cried Falta. I had these kids learning Spanish. I had them do a competition to see who shouted "goal" the longest. And, oh God, I had the best participant from that school district. Yeah, East St. Louis was one of my favorite ones. But yeah, I mean, we were learning Spanish with them. Share a little bit more about my community, my background, and because the book, even though it's the English version, there is a lot of bilingualism and Spanglish embedded in the story, and so I had to give them, hey, this is what this word means. It's gonna come up in the story. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we were all having fun learning a little bit more Spanish, and yeah, screaming goal.
Oh, awesome. I want to know, when are we going to get a book from David Flores that celebrates pupusas?
Oh man. So yes, I am working on different titles, you know, so I do help other authors publish their books and kind of put my own projects in the back burner. But yes, there is a few projects coming up. Of course, you met Max, my baby boy. Mm-hmm. Before that, I was a girl dad of two girls. So yeah, I don't have a book for that baby boy, right? So I'm working of Besito for Papito. That's one of them. Is gonna be a board book. And then I'm working on Pupusa. That's gonna be another book that I'm working on. So yeah, you know, food is a very essential part of who we are, right? Every culture has their food that people connect with. Yeah, language is another thing that they connect through. But yeah, pupusas, it was the most delicious meal you could always afford. Yeah. Right? So even though when my family were going through a financial struggle, pupusas were special because we could buy four pupusas for $1. Mm-hmm. And with $3, the whole family could eat a very, you know, high-end meal. So yes, you know, again, I think a lot of fables and folktales inspire my writing. And yeah, the gingerbread man, right? Everybody loves the gingerbread man and his phrase whenever he comes to life and everybody wants to eat him. Well, pupusa, you know, jumps out of the comal and everybody wants to eat the pupusa. So pupusa takes us through a tour of El Salvador at the same time as she, you know, tries to fight for her life.
I have a funny, when I was down, people who listen to the show know that I toured El Salvador with Clowns Without Borders. And one of our first shows was in a town in Sonsonate. And we're there, and there was a soccer pitch, and lots more people were down watching the soccer game than we were up watching our show. But it was just maybe the first or second show of the tour. And we decided we'd have this word. It'd be our emergency word when it was time for us to leave, or if there was some kind of trouble. And so after the show, we're out and we're playing with the audience and greeting them, and I'm teaching them magic tricks. And one of my fellow troop members was teaching juggling, and our tour manager came up to me and he said, "Papusa," that was our emergency word. And he came up to me and he said, "Papusa," and I said, "No, no tengo hambre, thank you." And he's like, "No, papusa, we gotta go."
Oh gosh, yeah. Maybe it should have been something like cantaloupe.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah, for me, it would have helped. You were telling me in Kansas City that, and one of the reasons David and I connected initially on was he was wearing an El Salvador jersey, his football jersey, and I recognized it because I have the same jersey, and so we started talking, and you were sharing with me that someone very special down in El Salvador acknowledged your book. Am I remembering that right?
Yes, yes. I mean, it was a very special day. So in Houston, there is a huge Salvadoran community. And I was contacted by the Salvadorian consulate in Houston. They wanted to do a family event and wanted to invite me over to come and share my book with the community, the Salvadorian community, and talk a little bit more about the book. So great event at the consulate. Somewhere near 60 people were out there, and a lot of kids got my book and taking pictures with me, and I was signing the book. And the Salvadorian consul, right? He's in charge of the Houston consulate. He approached me asking for some books for the president. And as you know, the president of El Salvador is pretty popular. It's one of the most popular presidents right now, with all the changes that he's done for the country. So he asked me for the books, and he would take it to him. And he has a young daughter. I think she may be 4 years old now. And, I sent her my books, and, I got a message on WhatsApp, and, of course, it's a note coming from the president, right? So he sent me a screenshot of a message from the president. And I didn't know at the time that you could do disappearing messages on WhatsApp. And I see it, and it was the president saying, tell him to tell me thank you, that his daughter loved my book. And I saw it. It was doing water break in the middle of practice, and I look at it, and my heart was just beaming. I mean, I was starstruck at that moment. And I try to look at it again after practice, and it was gone. So
no screenshot.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh.
All I have is a story to tell. I don't have proof of it, but yes, she read Mis Chanclas and Machones, which was my first board book, and she loved it. So yeah, that's a really cool story.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about The Boy Who Cried Falta and find out more about David Flores.
Yes, they can go to my website, browniebooks.com, and also find us on social media, Brownie Books. My Twitter handle is Coach Brownie TX, and that's where I am, and they can find out more about me, get any of my books. I do school visits year round, and I also do virtual author visit as well.
Wonderful. We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Boy Who Cried Falta. Our guest has been David Flores. David, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jed, for having me. It's been great.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and you enjoyed it so much that you've decided to join us for the next exciting episode of the show. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, @readingwithyourkids on Instagram, and @JedleyMagic on X. We have a great YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. You can find all of our Drawing with Your Kids and STEM is Family Fun videos on our Reading with Your Kids channel on YouTube. I'd also love it if you could visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. We'd love for you to click on the contact button up at the top of the page. Let us know what you love about the show. Let us know what we could be doing better. And let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of Reading with Your Kids. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guests. Deeba Zargarpur. Please be sure to check out Farrah Noorzad and the Ring of Faith. Also want to thank David Flores. Check out The Boy Who Cried Falta. I want to thank my amazing team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Rayling Tang. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.